Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Keaton Koehler. I'm an electrical engineer at LES, Lincoln Electric System, located in Lincoln, Nebraska. And today I'm going to talk about our LES's kind of journey through design automation. A little bit about LES. We're located in Lincoln, Nebraska. We're a publicly owned municipal utility. We are governed by an administrative board. We have 150,000 retail customers. Our design team consists of roughly 11 designers and engineers. Like Brad had said, we sort of kicked off our AUD in our design, electrical design, in 2022, and we did a phased launch in 2024. So what I'm going to discuss today is kind of how we used to do our design, our legacy design, the integration process from taking that into AUD, the implementation of that, and then some future plans that we have for the software and some lessons that we learned along the way through the whole process. So for our legacy design, for our drawings, we use AutoCAD. Our mapping system is Esri GIS. We use our electronic compatible unit software for our materials, which was actually designed by our local university in the 90s, I believe. So it was kind of a custom software that we used there that became kind of antiquated, and then SAP for our enterprise management. So typically, how we used to do it would basically take information from our GIS system and redraw it into AutoCAD. So anything that would be existing would have to be basically redrawn in AutoCAD, and then our new lines on top of that. So typically, we would have a base that we would use, our CAD technicians say we need this area. They would draw it in, and then our designers and engineers would build on top of that. And then going back into GIS, essentially the mappers would essentially redraw all of that work that was drawn into AutoCAD and bring that back into GIS and assign the appropriate information behind those as well. So there was some doubling up of work there that we saw an opportunity to increase productivity by using AUD. This is our old material handling system. We called it ECU, or electronic compatible units. Basically, pretty straightforward design, basically matching up with our spec book. And so we pick the specs we wanted and the necessary material with that. And then this would integrate with our SAP and export those materials through SAP. So going into the integration with AUD from our legacy system, when it came to AutoCAD, that was pretty straightforward since we had already used that system for our drawings before. I think our biggest kind of hurdle with that was aligning our legacy drawing standards to be implemented in AUD. So, we had over 1,000 layers, 50 equipment blocks and title blocks that we were able to bring into AUD and implement through there. Then for our GIS system, we have a very robust system from the knowledge that I have of utilities. We keep a lot of data in our GIS system, and it's been maintained for many years. We kind of prided ourselves on having that information and have a very reliable record when it comes to our existing facilities. So we wanted to maintain that going into AUD and ensure all of that information got brought back into GIS when we exported from AUD. So our compatible units integration, this was probably our biggest hurdle in terms of integration from our legacy system to AUD. Our spec book is pretty robust in terms of different specs that we used. The spec book that we had was kind of built towards that ECU software that we had originally used. So I'm going to kind of talk about why our specs were detailed and why that became kind of a hurdle going into AUD. So it starts off with our spec variants. So you can see in this example of a spec, we have basically the main spec, and then there's 6 different qualifiers for that spec, depending on what kind of configuration that you want. And you can see at the bottom there with the dots, basically each one of those dots is a different configuration that could be used. So each one of those had to be created into a model. So some of our model tables got to be pretty long. And so here's a list of those models now inside of AUD. And then on top of that, we had a lot of subspecs involved in each one of those variants. So the highlighted rows there in that list are all subspecs of that main variant of the parent spec. So each one of those is essentially its own feature attribute that had to be implemented into AUD. Now some of those are static and some of them are variable. So essentially the static ones were created into model attributes, variable ones into feature attributes. So kind of working with those and having some of the subspecs, which could be in a different feature class but are a subspec of a parent spec, got kind of complicated to ensure that we got all of the specs and materials that we needed for each one of our specs. So here you can see in our feature info screen now are those subspecs from our spec that are in the feature info. And again, some of those are static and some are variable. And then the materials, I'd say this is kind of unique for LES as well. We basically list out every single material that is involved with that spec down to the nuts and bolts. We don't really use quote-unquote truck stock, so it's pretty important that we ensure that we get all of the materials that are needed. In our old system, we did have the ability to add individual materials by their material number, which going into AUD we were not able to do, and that's I think more of a SAP limitation of how that was all set up. So it kind of was difficult to move around that, but I think we found a pretty good solution. And then those are basically all of the materials that are in the material list in AUD there. All right, so when it comes to the AUD implementation, I'm going to kind of talk about our user implementation and then the software implementation. So when it comes to the users, as we were beginning to roll this out to our engineers and designers, we learned kind of quickly that less automation can be better than unreliable automation. So you can see, like in the GIF there, there were some cases where a validation was running that users who didn't quite understand what was happening, they're trying to delete this fault indicator, and it just keeps coming back and keeps coming back. Validation could be turned off and that wouldn't happen, but in terms of new users coming onto the system and not knowing how that works, they kind of struggled with some of that. So as we kind of first started rolling this out, we noticed that people were having these issues. So we did roll back a little bit of the automation to get people comfortable with just working in the system in general and making sure that they understood how it worked. Visibility was another one, and that kind of runs in with the automation as well. So we found that it was important to show the users what, where, and why materials are being ordered. I know it's probably kind of hard to see, but in our feature info screen, at the bottom there, it says we have a tag quantity of 1. So we actually had, SPS created a pretty clever design rule to determine which direction tag that we need based on the start and end of the cable. So that worked pretty well, but when users see that material show up in the material list, they weren't quite sure where that was coming from. So they saw they had a tag. In some cases, maybe that tag wasn't correct. Maybe it said northeast, but really it was going east. So the way that it was set up, basically those users did not have the ability to change that if they wanted to. They can delete the tag, they can turn off validation and add their own manually, but that's kind of a cumbersome system. So we work to kind of increase the visibility, make sure that in the feature info screen, all of that information is present for the user, so they know where these materials are being ordered and have the opportunity to change them if needed be. Connectivity, this also goes back to the other two. When we were first bringing in users, they were not familiar with the system of connecting different structures and lines. Geez, I must have brought up some food here. So. We've been stressing on our users that the connectivity is important, and that connectivity is what drives a lot of this automation. So as the users are getting more and more comfortable with connectivity, then we can add in more automation because they understand that relationship. I think that was kind of a training issue when it came to rolling this out, but having that knowledge of when I connect this, that the reason I'm getting this material is because that connection is driving it. So that was another important factor on the user implementation. And then finally, just data security. We have had an issue, and we still continue to have issues with software and data security, data being saved. We've had users that have worked on a drawing and have lost their work because of that. So as the users are using this, if they lose a project and they have to restart, then it starts to get a little difficult with ensuring that they trust the software and the systems to be there when they come back. So then that leads kind of into the software implementation of AUD for us at LES. We've had a few issues with some of the implementation. Starting off with SharePoint, OneDrive, that's what we use for our drawing and file repository. We've had a lot of issues with syncing. So when a drawing is saved, basically that local file then is saved locally, and that file is then synced up to the SharePoint OneDrive. We've had times where the sync just doesn't occur. Sometimes it takes too long, where somebody else goes to try and open that drawing, and with that sync not being lined up, it creates a new version, and then people are looking at different versions. So we've been trying to kind of nail down why we're having these sync issues, and also file size. We have implemented a few backup saves, and that kind of ballooned into a lot of storage space. So we're still kind of working through that. Eventually, we're probably going to move towards more of a vault type system in the future, but for right now, like I said, the OneDrive, it works for the most part, but we still have some of the issues with syncing. X data. So this has kind of been our biggest problem on our software rollout. We've been trying to figure out what is the main cause of this, but it's been a major issue. So if anybody has run into this, please reach out to us. Essentially, there's some issue with how AutoCAD saves the industry model database into the DWG itself. And essentially, if that doesn't get saved correctly, the next time you open up that drawing, you have all your lines, you have all your drawing, but the information behind the drawing is missing. Essentially, that just doesn't get integrated back into the DWG. So, as you can see with the error up on the right, basically there's 893, lines, polylines, equipment, but there's no data behind it because that industry model database is missing. So we found a few kind of quote unquote workarounds for this. We're saving a backup IDM on each save. So if we do run into this and that IDM does save properly, we can recover that database information from that backup file. But in some cases, even the IDM doesn't save correctly. So we've been trying to work through this, trying to figure out what is the root cause of this issue, but it's something we're still working on. Fatal errors, and we've had fatal errors in AutoCAD, since we've began using it, and I'm sure that's not going to change, but the fatal errors kind of leads into this X data issue. So if a drawing fatal errors crashes and doesn't save properly, then we run into that again. So this kind of compounds on top of the just basic error in saving. So we did find there have been cases where a user will get this fatal error, open the drawing back up, everything's fine. They try to move around and they get another fatal error. So we did find that sometimes purging the drawing can alleviate this issue, but again, we just don't know the root cause of that issue. So and it just happens sporadically, a lot of this stuff. So it's just very hard to diagnose the problems. So basically, that's kind of another issue that we've ran into. And then finally, just SAP in general has guardrails involved. So if the setup isn't quite right, or if materials are missing information that SAP needs, there are good error results for if it's missing a material location, material source, labor source, that sort of thing. Those are pretty easy to fix, but some of the background talking between AUD and SAP we've had problems with. But for the most part, those are pretty easily solved. But just like I said, just to think about the kind of the guardrails that SAP kind of puts up when it comes to moving that information back and forth. So looking forward, future-wise, like I said, with the automation, we'd like to kind of keep implementing more and more automation. And if anybody wants to rap about rules in AUD, please fire, because we've really kind of dove into these rules, and we've implemented a lot on our own that have been really good for our users, but still trying to kind of learn the ins and outs of the rules. Validations, that's another one where we kind of have the out-of-the-box validations, but we really want to go in and kind of hone those in to be specific for LAS, so they make more sense to our users. For right now, we're not really using a whole lot of these, but that's kind of on our list to kind of refine those validations to help our users, so they can reliably trust that when AUD says this is a problem, we know that it's something we really need to look into. Quality of life improvements, we've done a lot of these already, but just sorting things in the feature info screen, the UI changes, but we're going to continue to to update those as we go forward. And then the final upgrade we like to do is our GIS import and export accuracy. With the import, we still have a lot of lines or a lot of pieces of equipment that don't map quite right, so they don't get a model set. I think there's quite a bit of room for us to kind of go in there and really refine how those imports come in, and will be a lot less cleanup as we import these things from GIS. I do love this feature though, like I said at the beginning, where when we have to redraw what's basically already in GIS, it created a lot of time, a lot of manpower to get what we already have drawn into these drawings. So I do love the import and export, and so do our mappers as well. So we're really looking forward to kind of improving that as we go forward. So finally, just some lessons that we learned kind of along the way. Alter the spec book if necessary early. What we kind of realized towards the end of the project is a lot of these variants and subspecs that are in our spec book that I mentioned earlier, they're not really necessary with the capabilities that AUD has. So that first spec that I had shown, there was two variants at the end of that, or qualifiers, for whether it was 1-aught or 3-aught terminations and how many that you needed. Looking at how AUD works, that could easily be figured out based on connections and what you have connected to that piece of equipment. So essentially, those 6 variables, qualifiers that were in our original spec, we could probably get away with just 2, just by the power of AUD's connections and rules. So that's something that I would recommend going in early if you have the ability to kind of update some of those things. It would be helpful. Obviously, clarifying long-term roles early. If you have somebody who's going to be the end user for implementing rules and that sort of thing, if you can get them involved early to really understand the software, I think that could be helpful. Understanding software as much as possible early. I think this was kind of an issue as we were going through the first kind of stages of implementing our spec book into basically the model tables. As we were going through it, we were being asked questions like, why do you use this? Where do you use this? How do you use this? We could answer those questions, but I don't think we fully understood why that question was being asked. I can look back now and see, oh yeah, that's why they were asking that, because this drives this. But at that time, I think we were kind of struggling understanding like where that information was important. So I think that could be really helpful. Collaborate with a users group and phase in users. So currently we have a users group with our engineers and designers to kind of bring together information, things that they're running into, kind of ideas on what can be improved. So that's been extremely helpful. Set comfort level. I think that's important in terms of having the users at the end trust the software. When we first rolled it out to a few people, there were issues that they were running into commonly, that after they ran into those issues, they started to not really trust what the automation was doing, because if it's giving you the wrong materials consistently, then at that point you really don't trust AUD kind of making those choices for you. So I think before bringing people in, I know there's going to be a few things that need to be adjusted, but if you can ensure that information is reliable and those choices are reliable, I think that can really help users really accept moving into AUD. And then decide whether to make changes to major software tandemly or separately. So we did basically the change to AUD as well as our GIS and SAP integration all at the same time. You know, that kind of just takes away resources on both sides of the coin there. So would it have been better to do the SAP stuff first and then AUD? It's hard to say, but again, it just takes up resources around the board. So it's kind of a tough decision to make, but like I said, that's just something to think about. So with that, that's what I have. Does anybody have any questions? Pat.
You took your embedded CUs all the way down to the bolts. Was that just for costing, or was that after when you took it out of the warehouse? So if I drop the bolt in the field, I have to go back and get another one?
So the question was about the nuts and bolts in our specs. Essentially, anytime that we would order that spec, it would pull one quantity of that from. So it's more of a material ordering deal. Our trucks, you know, even though we don't have a truck stock, they have those bolts on their truck. So you know, that's how that worked. But so yeah, it wasn't that they got picked an individual bolt and that went out with the crew. So, but yeah, that's a good question. Really? Yeah, I from when I first got here or got to LES, you know, that was kind of, you know, I talked to other companies about their specs, and they, you know, truck stock was kind of the norm around the industry, and so.
And another follow-up question. So you guys are very advanced on your digital solutions, always have been. Have you seen an improvement in the whole asset management strategy, less errors in the field by this process, or were you already there?
I feel like it's getting better and better as we go. When we were implementing this, we took a hard look at our specs, mostly on the labor side. You know, I think we're kind of undercounting labor because we kind of had an old system that had kind of accounted for that. So we went through and updated that. But I think as we increase our automation and again on that reliability of ensuring that we're getting the right stuff, I have no doubt that we will increase our asset reliability in terms of getting the right information and the right materials.
And this last question is for the audience. With that gnat flying around your head during the whole speech, does anyone know the original name of the Nebraska football team? The Bug Eaters.
Yeah, thanks for that, Keaton. Just wanted to dive a little bit more into, you were mentioning issues with where you were saving your files and syncing issues and stuff. So just wanted to clarify, I guess, what you're doing today. Like your AUD files are stored locally on your machines and then uploaded to SharePoint or OneDrive, and maybe just a few more details about that, of how your system looks.
So essentially, when you link a CM, link a drawing, basically a folder is created in our synced SharePoint site. So say it's our construction measure number is 10, you link that folder then automatically gets created in the SharePoint OneDrive. Each one of the users has that SharePoint OneDrive folder synced on their computer. So essentially, you know, it's a local copy of the online folder. So that drawing is saved locally in that folder, but that folder is then synced to the kind of online folder. So when you save, it's saved locally, and then that local save is then synced with OneDrive. And that's just the kind of the hierarchy of a SharePoint OneDrive folder system.
Oh, it was? Okay.
For the saving,
I've heard that this way you also share the information and allow customers, not customers, but maybe your staff to work on the same files at the same time.
oh, no, there's not it's not collaborative. It's more of everybody is looking at the same file. So when I save the drawing and I send it to my supervisor, basically they're synced to that same folder, and then when they open it, they're pulling that same file. So that's kind of where that sync error can happen, where I save a file, I send it to my supervisor, but that sync may be taking a long time. He goes to open it, he's not seeing the most current up-to-date synced version. So that's where we've run into issues. Okay, thank you.